22% of men have cheated on their wives, and 14% of wives have cheated on their husbands. In this video, we're going to talk about how to avoid cheating. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, where on this channel we believe that whatever has your attention has your direction. And we're in a series right now that we're calling Hacking Your Marriage. Now, there are 5 key areas that people have identified as problem areas in their marriage relationships. So the one we're focused on today is this whole idea of people looking outside of their marriage relationship for some kind of satisfaction or some kind of fulfillment. And honestly, we just call that cheating. We call that adultery. This is where a spouse steps out on their marriage and they go after somebody else. We know it. We know people. We have family members, friends, maybe even ourselves that have experienced this. And so in this video, we're going to talk about how to avoid it. Now, I think that most of these things, especially as believers, need to start, if not all these things, need to start with a scriptural foundation. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4, and I'm going to be reading from the Amplified Bible. Marriage is to be held in honor among all, that is, regarded as something of great value, and the marriage bed undefiled by immorality or by any sexual sin. For God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. So the whole idea behind this particular passage is that we are to elevate our understanding and our value of marriage and the marriage bed. So you can see how this has everything to do with adultery, everything to do with making sure that what we do in our marriages honors the marriage. It raises the level of our understanding and our value of the marriage and of the marriage bed. So I think a really good way to say it would be this. An honored marriage is a fulfilling marriage. I'll say that again. An honored marriage is a fulfilling marriage. When we honor our spouse, when we honor the vows that we've taken, when we honor the relationship that we have, and when we honor the marriage bed, our marriages do become more fulfilling when both parties are fulfilling their roles within that marriage relationship. Now, there's some benefits to a healthy relationship, and we've talked about them in the very first video in this series, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of them again. And one of them is studies have shown that one of the benefits to a healthy relationship, a healthy marriage relationship, is a longer life. Now, that's not just because your spouse might kill you. It's actually, studies have shown that a lack of social relationships was equivalent to smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. And so having a healthy relationship with your spouse is something that can contribute to a longer lifespan. Fun and fulfillment is another thing that you get out of it. Having a partner to share the good times with and great experiences with is a benefit to you. And then another benefit is that you just get a greater sense of purpose. Look, when you're doing life with somebody else and you're moving forward together and you're moving towards something, you get a greater sense of purpose because you're serving that person you're with, you're experiencing things together, but then also you're bringing your hearts and your minds together towards something more. You get a greater sense of purpose. So these are great things, and these are things that benefit your marriage relationship. Now, I mentioned that this particular video is on the topic of how to avoid cheating. So let's just dive right into it. How do we avoid cheating? So I think there's 3 key things or categories that we could really look at for today. And again, it's not an exhaustive list, but I think these are key components to being able to avoid cheating, avoid having an affair. And the first thing would be this: count the cost. Well, just count that cost. For example, think about what's going to happen after you cheat. Often a lot of people have short-range vision when it comes to these kinds of things in relationship. They think about the immediate need, but not necessarily about the long-term impact that this may have on them. So consider what happens after. What do you think is going to happen after you fulfill this fantasy? What are the long-term effects of what you're doing? What does it do to your family? What does it do to you? Some people, their workplaces, it impacts them in that way. It impacts how people view your character and your integrity. What are the long-term impact elements to this? How are you looking ahead and evaluating how this is going to potentially impact you? Ask yourself what you think you're going to gain by cheating. So it's a good idea to resist temptation. One of the ways that we can do that is to ask ourselves kind of 2 questions. And that is, what do I gain if I cheat? Now, what do I need from myself or from my partner that I'm not currently receiving? What do I need from myself? And what do I need from my partner that I'm not currently receiving? I got to tell you that the needs that you have for yourself and the needs that you have from your partner, uh, asking these questions and then moving in the direction of getting them fulfilled in the appropriate way within the context of your marriage relationship is always going to serve you better than stepping out. So ask yourself the question, what do you think you're going to gain by cheating? What do you gain for yourself? What do you gain for others? And when you really stop to think about it, what you're looking to gain and what you might possibly lose can help put things into perspective. So, what are you looking to gain for yourself, for your partner? What are you expecting that you might potentially lose? These are things that are important. Count the cost because there's a cost. Second thing, self-monitor. Look, you want to avoid having an affair. You want to avoid even just the potential of this because I have to tell you, we have a very negative view of people who step out on their spouses. But the reality is that without the appropriate boundaries set up in life, any person on the planet is able to have an affair. And we just need to make sure that all understand that. Now, I know that there's a lot of people that would say, oh, no, not me, never me. But the reality is that in the right context, in the right circumstances, every single person on the planet can be tempted towards this. So we should set up boundaries to make sure that it's less likely that these things can happen. So the first one, count the cost. The second one, self-monitor. For example, if you find yourself having a bit of a crush on somebody, well, you got to take that crush seriously and you got to eliminate those temptations. So if you find that you're spending a lot of time with a person, if you find that you're actively keeping in touch with them over social media or email or texting or whatever those other mediums are available to you, if you find that that this person is just somebody that you are perhaps overly looking forward to seeing, you got to stop. You just got to nip that in the bud immediately. Like you guys, it can't go further. You got to get that thing to stop before it goes too deep. You got to stop it. And so you got to eliminate that temptation. You got to take your crushes seriously, and immediately by eliminating that temptation, here's what you do: you get rid of your social media contact with them. You get rid of their phone numbers if you have it. You stop the texting. You block the number. You do everything that you need to do to get rid of it. Jesus actually said it this way when he was talking about what one does with sin in their lives, and he takes a very aggressive approach to it. He actually says that if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. Now he's using hyperbole. And hyperbole is essentially sort of an over-the-top way of saying something that is true. And so what he's saying here is take an aggressive approach to the things that should not be a part of your life and remove them from your life. Eliminate the temptation. Also, I would highly recommend this as a standard rule of thumb for anyone. No relationship talk with the opposite sex. Look, if you are having difficulties in your marriage relationship, don't talk to another woman about it. Talk to another guy about it. When you talk to another woman about it, there is that potential for the emotions to connect with each other and lead you down a path that you never thought you would go. Anybody who could be a potential alternative to your spouse is somebody that doesn't get to hear about your relationship with your spouse. And especially if you want to complain about the relationship. Again, it's just best practice that if you're having difficulty in your marriage relationship, talk to somebody of the same gender, where there is very little to no risk of anything taking place. If you want to talk to somebody about the relationship, I would highly recommend that he or she has to be a friend of the relationship, somebody who is in favor of your marriage, not against your marriage. Someone who's not going to take your side against your spouse, somebody who's going to be on the side of your marriage relationship. And stop giving yourselves opportunities and permission to cheat. I mean, that's a big one. That's an ideological shift. Stop giving yourself permission and opportunities to cheat. I mean, we can fill our minds with all kinds of excuses. Don't do it. Don't give yourself permission. Don't give yourself opportunities. Eliminate these things. And then I would say thirdly, as a foundational principle, pursue your spouse. Like, I get it. You may not always feel like it. Maybe you feel underappreciated. Maybe you've got this idea in your head of what marriage should be, and this person isn't fulfilling your idea of what marriage should be. Pursue your spouse. Both of you pursue each other. If you put your energy back into the relationship, it's a whole lot more likely you're going to get energy out of the relationship. The urge to cheat often stems from things like boredom within the relationship. And so why not try to rekindle things with your spouse? Go back and watch the video on date nights. Look, there's a reason we're talking about this. All of these topics have a tendency to flow into each other. If you don't have good communication, then you need to get good communication. If you're not having meaningful times together, well, then you need meaningful times together. And we pursue each other in the marriage relationship so that you can have a fulfilling marriage relationship and an honoring one. Make the effort to turn things around by communicating with your partner and finding ways to reboot the relationship. Just find ways to reboot it. What are the things that you can engage with together, getting on the same page, right? That was the first video. What are the things that you could do together to move forward together, hand in hand, recognizing you got some work to do? Now, here's a special little note for people who have children within the marriage relationship, because what happens often is that people lose their identity a little bit when kids come along. Often I find couples over the years that I've been working with people, they have a tendency to define themselves primarily as parents, and they've lost that definition of what it means to be best friends with each other, what it means to be confidants, companions, and lovers with each other. And so it becomes very, very important for those that have child-focused marriages or child-centered marriages. We need to make sure that we're creating a strong bond still within our marriage relationship, because the best thing you could do for your kids is to have a great marriage. And so how do you recognize whether or not you got a child-centered marriage? Well, think about these things. You talk little about work, your life, or your plans. If you talk very little about your work, your life, or your plans, and most of your conversations are all about the kids, you might have a child-centered relationship. If at dinner all you could talk about is your children, if you're only going out with other couples who have children, but then you don't go out much at all because you have your own kids. Children are the main factor in deciding what you do for your holidays. And you're not really considering things for yourselves. Movies are always kids' movies, and you're never having times with just the two of you watching a film. And these are just examples. But if you are a but if you are a child-centered couple, you need to and you should build a couple culture. And by that, what I mean is you need to make sure that you're having those times together to make sure that you're having those emotionally intimate moments so that you can connect on a deeper level, and remember that you're best friends. Remember that you're companions with each other. Remember that you're not just a dad, you're a husband. You're not just a mom, you're a wife. And together you have something wonderful. So make sure then that if you have kids in the marriage, that you don't sacrifice your marriage for the sake of your children, that rather you build your marriage for the sake of the children. And if you don't, I mean, one of the things to bear in mind is that intimate bond that you have will begin to erode. And then when the kids leave, when they're no longer part of the picture in terms of living under your roof, you get that empty nest syndrome. And that empty nest syndrome can often lead to divorce because couples don't know how to engage with each other anymore. So don't stop engaging with each other, and make sure that you have a good couple culture within the context of your marriage. And I would say, honestly, guys, just don't waste your time on anybody else. You married the person you married for a reason. Don't forget it. Move forward in it. And I get that there's a lot of things that can come along the way that can be very hurtful. But nothing hurts the marriage the same way that an affair does. Don't give yourself permission. Don't give yourself opportunities. And I would say don't waste your energy on somebody else, because the person you've got with you right now is fantastic. Nurture that relationship. Build into it. Honor them as they honor you, and something fantastic to take place. Hebrews 13:4, I'll say it again. Marriage is to be held in honor among all, and that is regarded as something of great value. And the marriage bed undefiled by immorality or by any kind of sexual sin. For God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. And again, the benefits of a healthy relationship, of a healthy marriage, is a longer life, a more fun-filled life full of fulfillment, and a greater sense of purpose. When we talk about this whole idea of difficulties that people need to overcome in marriage relationships, One of the realities is, yeah, absolutely. 22% of men have affairs, 14% of women have affairs. And that doesn't even count. Like, this is just the physical affairs. We're not even talking about the emotional affairs that people have with each other, where they essentially use somebody else as a surrogate for what they're lacking at home. And that just explodes the number. Don't do it. Don't have an affair. Your marriage is worth it. Your spouse is worth it. Don't give yourself permission. Don't give yourself opportunity. And don't waste your time with somebody else, because who you have is amazing. Well, thanks for tuning in. If you found value in this video, just ask that you would consider sharing it with somebody that you think might also find value in it. And you know what? Consider subscribing, clicking that bell icon so that you can get notified whenever new videos pop up. Now, I should also tell you that this particular video is going to get divided into 2 other videos that are going to be coming up on the topic of affairs, because it's just such a big topic that we got to tackle it a little bit more. So stay tuned for that. Hit the subscribe, hit the notification button so that you'll be notified when those other videos pop up. Well, everybody, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. And just by way of a reminder, whatever has your attention has your direction.